Hello everyone and welcome to episode 12 of Bike Size Rallying, and this time it's the turn of this, the Group B 275 brake horsepower rear wheel drive normally aspirated Opel Manta 400, campaigned by the Rothmans Open Rally team in selected rounds of the 1983 World, European and British Open Rally Championships, and the car is synonymous with that very famous rivalry between Russell Brooks and Jimmy McRae in the 1984 and 1985 British Open Series. And it was a time in British rallying history when the British Open Series was very much regarded as only second to the World Series. It attracted the best drivers, the best teams and the best cars. And very much the vintage days of British rallying. So, picture the scene. May 1983. When the Opel Manta 400 made its international debut on the Corsican Rally. It perhaps should be acknowledged that the car was pretty much obsolete by the time it turned a wheel on a World Championship Rally. Due to delays with the homologation process, true enough, the successor to the Opel Ascona 400 was a little bit lighter and a little bit more powerful. But the car was very much the conventional era of rally cars, but that era was shifting. And Audi had just won the 1982 World Manufacturers' Championship with a four-wheel drive, turbocharged 350 horsepower original Quattro. Lancia had a very successful campaign in 1983 with a supercharged 037, but despite winning the World Manufacturers Series in that year, even they knew that the days of a rear-wheel drive rally car were certainly numbered, and they had the Delta S4 in development. Peugeot had the 205 Turbo 16 waiting in the wings. Not to mention Austin Road with the Metro 6R4, the Ford RS200 and Citroën BX4TC. So Opel's answer for World Rally dominance lay with this, a rear-wheel drive rally car, less than 300 horsepower, a rather ungainly machine you could probably regard, but it's something like 14 foot 6 inches long. And it was based on the car that first hit the showrooms as the Vauxhall Cavalier Sports Hatch in Britain, or the Opel Manta in 1976. So it's certainly was not really a recipe for World Championship success. And I certainly feel that if the Manta had perhaps appeared 2 years earlier, it would have perhaps had a taste of World Rally success. But as it was, 1983, Guy Fracklin debuted the car on the Corsican Rally. It wasn't a fairy tale debut. He retired on the fast, sweeping, dusty roads of Greece for the next round of the championship. Vatanen did finish a promising fourth, and Jimmy McRae, after a troubled end to the rally, wound up 8th place. In Finland, Vatanen and Henry Tarman proved that driving a conventional rear-wheel drive car with a fast-flowing finish was an absolute commitment. The car could be competitive, but ultimately both drivers retired. Vatanen, I think it was, got 4th place in San Remo, and Jimmy McRae took a magnificent 3rd place on the 1983 RAC Rally, behind 2 Audi Quattros and ahead of another one. But the Manta's chances of success on the Top Flight World Rally Championship were pretty much very slim chances, and Rothmans Opel knew that. So for 1984, the lucrative Rothmans sponsorship went elsewhere, and Opel concentrated on domestic championships throughout Europe. And that is where, certainly in Britain, the GM dealer sport team, the rally team funded by the dealers, for every £100, for every Vauxhall or Opel that a dealer sold in Britain, they paid £100 to fund the rally programme. And it was GM Dealer Sport that put Jimmy McRae in this car, the AC Delco Manta 400 for 1984. And in a rivalry that the press liked to whip up as a little bit of a needle between the two drivers, Russell Brooks was in the Andrews Heat for Higher Manta, and both drivers in the same team. GM were looking for maximum column inches and they're looking for maximum TV exposure. And this is an era, don't forget, of 4-channel telly, pre-internet, grandstand or ITV World of Sport on a Saturday afternoon was where it was all at. And we all used to wait with their video records poised, waiting for the rallying to come on. Oh, the athletics is overrun or the cricket's overrun, rallying will be on next week. But it was certainly a great exposure for GM Dealer Sport and the Opel Manta. So the opening rally of the 1984 British Championship, the Yorkshire Rally, the National Breakdown, McRae got the better of his new teammates. McRae finished second and Russell was third, but both had to give second best to reigning world champion Harry Mickle in the Audi Quattro. On the next round in Ireland, the Circuit of Ireland over Easter, the Manta were expected to dominate, but the battle between the two protagonists did not materialise. Both retired, but luckily for Opel, Irishman Billy Coleman took victory in his dealer Opel Team Ireland, Opel Manta, the Welsh rally, and Russell was always sublime in Wales. He was always quick, he loved the Welsh Forest, and on the opening day of the Welsh rally over the tarmac military ranges of Eppint, Russell was very, very much in contention to win the rally. And ultimately, Russell finished second, and Jimmy, slightly less on form, was fourth. Audi Quattros occupying the highest places. In Scotland, and it was the familiar story, Jimmy was second in his Manta to an Audi Quattro. Come the Ulster Rally, and it was expected that the Mantas may do well in Ulster, but Stig Blomqvist in his Audi Quattro had other ideas, and Jimmy McRae in the AC Delco Manta had some issues on that rally, and actually wound up, I think it was third place behind Russell. But nonetheless, consistent scoring by the two drivers ensured that they were both poised to take the title on the bumpy, fast-flowing tarmac lanes of the Isle of Man. And ultimately, while the two swapped the lead, Russell hit a bridge parapet, wrote the Manta off, and Jimmy kept his car on the road, kept his cool to win the 1984 British Open Rally Championship. And following that, the cars lined up for the RAC rally. Now, Jimmy, whilst he was carrying number 4 on the door of this car, WIA 5958, Jimmy knew that he was unlikely to finish in that position. Harry Vatten was in the Peugeot, and there was a gaggle of Audi Quattros. But the rivalry between Brooks and McRae ensued, and Russell, despite rearranging the shape of his Manta, and at one point, it resembled a pickup after he rolled it in one of the forests, he finished 5th, Jimmy was 7th, and Bertie Fisher was 9th, and they took the team prize in that rally. Here we see a shot of Jimmy's Manta at scrutineering, car number 4, Russell's Manta, number 16, that would eventually finish 5th, and Bertie Fisher, car number 37, that would finish 9th. And they took the team prize. And on that event as well, the pre-event scrutineering at Chester, I picked up a GM Dealer Sport pamphlet, Team News, and on the back of that publication was the name and address of the team coordinator, a chap called John Horton. And the sped of mind, my dad, I wrote to Mr. Horton asking if I could meet Jimmy McRae and have a drive and have a ride in the rally car. Now, I'll be honest, I was actually an Audi Quattro Harry Mickle fan at that time, but I didn't mention this in the letter to GM. And I wrote the letter, forgot about it. 2 or 3 weeks later, came home from school one lunchtime, had a lovely letter on GM Dealer Sport headed notepaper from Mr. Horton. Dear Neil, inviting me to attend the 1985 National Breakdown Rally in Yorkshire. I would meet the whole team, Jimmy, Russell, all the drivers, all the co-drivers, see all the cars at the pre-event scrutiny at the Victoria Hotel in Bradford, and I was sit alongside Jimmy to scrutineering for that event, and a fantastic time was had. I was treated like a real VIP. They arranged for a local Vauxhall Opel dealership to chauffeur drivers to Bradford in a lovely Opel Senator, and it was a fantastic day. And here's some images from that day. Jimmy and I at scrutineering, they adorned me with full GM Dealer Sport team wear, which I got to keep, which was a nice touch. There's me and Jimmy again, and me pausing in front of the Manta, and not taking it for a spin, but sat behind the wheel. And I didn't bring Jimmy much luck in that rally, to be honest. Whilst being in contention and battling with Malcolm Wilson and Michel Mouton in the Audi Quattros on the gravel event, the water pump failed, or the oil pump, one of the pumps anyway. A component that Jimmy later told me was probably valued at about 20p, but put him and Ian Greenwood out of the rally. In Easter, Circuit of Ireland rally, and it was a battle between McRae and Brooks in the Mantas. And Jim was actually 20 seconds ahead. I think it was at the Waterford rest halt. And GM Dealer Sport team manager Melvin Hodgson pulled rank and ordered the two drivers to hold station. Jimmy would go on to win the rally and get valuable European Championship points, which was his other goal for that year. And Russell would have to finish second. The battle was off. And that's the way the cars rolled into the finish line. So it was a 1-2-3 for the Manta. I think Bertie Fisher might have finished third in that event as well. And but it didn't go down too well in the orange camp. The Andrews Heat for Hire Manta was pretty aggrieved that they didn't have a chance to continue that battle, and it certainly was a battle. And as such, in Wales, Russell had the bit between his teeth, and he was absolutely sublime in the opening day up at Military Ranges. And at the end of the opening day at the Aberystwyth restaurant, where myself and my parents were looking on, Russell actually led the rally, a gaggle of Audi Quattros behind him, and Jimmy was well placed as well. However, overnight the heavens opened, and Russell knew that to keep the lead in the rear-wheel drive Manta against the Quattros in the wet was going to be a very, very tall order indeed. But it's all credit to him, he certainly tried. In doing so, he put the Manta off the road. And despite the rivalry and the needle between the two, Jimmy actually stopped to check whether he could help his teammate, such the gent that the Scotsman was. Ultimately, Jimmy finished third, beating one Audi Quattro behind another two. In Scotland, it's a familiar story. Russell had twisted his ankle. Jimmy joked that was because he'd fallen over his wallet. He'd actually fallen down the stairs, twisted his ankle, so the GM dealer spot mechanics put a servo on the brakes to try and help him. But Russell wasn't on the pace compared to Jimmy on that event, and despite Jimmy going off, he took a familiar second place behind an Audi Quattro. Russell followed him home in third. Come Ulster, and it was a battle of the Mantas, Brooks and McRae, and GM had given Russell a lightweight Manta for this event, ADZ31, whereas Jimmy still had the Forest Spec car made good for tarmac that I sat beside him in February at the National Breakdown Rally. So Russell probably did have the advantage with the slightly lighter car. And the two was in a battle where Melvin Hodgson again called time, said, okay, the positions stay as they are. This time Russell was in front, so Russell took the win. Jimmy followed him home in second. So come the start line for the 1985 Manx International Rally, and the British Championship was poised. Leading the championship was Jimmy McRae on 49 points. Equal leader of the championship was teammate Russell Brooks on 49 points. And Malcolm Wilson was third in the championship on 45 points. With 15 points available for a win, the title was between these three drivers. And they had thrown all they could at this event. There were 4 Quattros in total, 3 to back up Wilson. And they're giving Wilson a 450 horsepower Quattro Sport as well. Jimmy had the bit between his teeth, and at the start line for the first stage, the Scottish commentator Alan Douglas actually commented to Jimmy. He said, it's a heavier car than Russell's, isn't it? And Jimmy responded, he said, yeah, GM didn't have enough time to build the lightweight car. But Jimmy quipped, but Russell's 30 kilos heavier than me, so it kind of balances out. That was fantastic, and synonymous of the rivalry and the needle and the respect between the two. Out on the stages, and Jimmy was awesome. Russell couldn't keep up. He was something like a minute and a half behind. Malcolm Wilson toyed with Jimmy for the lead, but ultimately couldn't keep up. Jimmy was in the lead. Malcolm tried, put his Quattro Sport off, so it looked like Jimmy McRae and England were going to take another British Open Championship title, and the AC Delco machine would reign supreme again. However, Jimmy's car started overheating, and his mechanics, Alex Strathdy and Ian Anderson, cut holes in the front of the grille of the Manta to try and give it some additional kill, and they cut these slats out here. But it was to no avail, and coming into the service on the penultimate day, they had to change the radiator, and they only had 10 minutes in service to do it. They'd never done it in that period of time. And the inevitable happened. The mechanics did a sterling job, changed the radiator, but it took them longer than 10 minutes, and subsequently they got some. Jimmy and Ian had road penalties, and they emerged on the final morning in second place, courtesy of those road penalties, something like a minute and a half behind Russell. But Jim was still on it and determined to claw back. And remember that Russell had put it off the year previously, trying to keep up. However, unfortunately, the Manta hit electrical problems and as well, and ultimately, it wasn't to be, and he finished second place to Russell. And Russell won the 85 title, Jim won the 84 title. It's quite an interesting story actually. Now you rewind to 1983 and the Rothmans Manta of McRae and Greenwood in the Ulster Rally, when the rear axle had failed, which was really the Achilles heel of the Manta in the early days. The rear axle fails, the mechanics chained the axle. In doing so, they dislodged the fuel pump, and they're going down one of the stages with a new back axle. Jimmy and Ian actually both passed out because the mechanics had dislodged the fuel pump, and the fumes had got into the cabin. They'd lost 10 minutes because they were both unconscious. And there was a great shot on ITV World of Sport, an interview with Ian Greenwood, where he was talking about how he'd passed out because the petrol was in the car. He was dragging on his Rothman's fag as he was telling this story to Barry Hinchcliffe, which was quite funny, really. And so there we go. So 84 and 85, it was a Brooks McRae battle in the British Championship. Come the RAC rally, Jimmy had found out pretty much on the eve of the rally that he wouldn't have a drive for 86. GM was scaling down the effort, knowing that this car was going to be obsolete against the supercars that were all lined up for the 1986 British Championship. But that didn't stop Jimmy putting an amazing show on the RAC Rally. Finished 6th overall, beat Russell, finished second two-wheel drive car, only beaten by future world champion Hugh Kanken in the Toyota Celica with something like 370 horsepower, turbocharged as well. And Russell finished 8th as well, so it was a great RAC Rally for the Opels. Come 1986, and it wasn't a vintage year for the Opels, but Russell kept going, and he had a fantastic second place in the Circuit of Ireland, consistently finished 4th or 5th against the supercars. He was actually only beaten by one to finish second in the British Championship. And then Manta actually had a stay of execution in 1987 when all the Group B supercars were banned. They were allowed to use the cars unselected, whereas the British Championship, which didn't qualify for the European Championship, so the national great day around the Manta took victory with Penty Rickler ahead of Russell. On the Welsh road, there's a Manta 1-2-3. Brooks translated all his Welsh form into a fantastic win. Rickler was second, with Andrew Wood third. And so there we have it, the Opel Manta 400. And it was certainly a very, very special car for me. And you can see here a picture of it in my living room, Christmas 1986. My mum and some friends there, and there's the poster of Jimmy McRae on our living room wall, which is how we conduct our life, bit of an Opel Manta obsession. Here's another shot of me on a street in Shropshire in my GM Sport team wear in front of a passerby's Opel Manta, and it wasn't a great look for a young student about to be a teenager, but there we have it. So Opel Manta 400, an awesome rally car on tarmac. Perhaps missed its sport in the World Rally Championship, perhaps 2 years too late, but a fantastic car in domestic championships, won the French championships. Mickey Biasian drove the car in Italy, Guy Freckler in France, obviously, and Jimmy and Russell. And the car was also accompanied by a whole host of club drivers in Britain: Pete Slights, Clinton Smith, Bill Dorby, Phil Collins, Vince Wetton, Ian Holt. A fantastic rally car. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Opel Manta 400. See you next time. And remember, Vauxhall Opel, better by design. Thank you.